1. From Tolerance to Condemnation. Martin Luther's On the Jews and Their Lies, published in 1543. This is not a fictional narrative, but a theological and polemical treatise written in response to what Luther perceived as Jewish misinterpretations of Christian scriptures and their refusal to convert to Christianity. Luther, the Protestant reformer, had earlier expressed more tolerant views toward Jews in works like that Jesus Christ was born a Jew, 1523, hoping to convert them by demonstrating Christianity's alignment with Jewish scriptures. However, by the 1540s, disillusioned by their lack of conversion and influenced by reports of Jewish proselytizing and alleged blasphemies, he shifted to a harshly antagonistic stance. This book marks the culmination of that shift, serving as a rant against Judaism, blending biblical exegesis, historical accusations, and calls for action. It unfolds as a step-by-step dismantling of Jewish claims to divine favor, followed by accusations of moral and social evils, and ends with practical recommendations. 2. Dismantling Jewish claims. This story begins with Luther explaining his reluctance to engage the topic, but feeling compelled to counter a Jewish treatise that he believes twists Christian doctrine. He argues that Jews have been abandoned by God, evidenced by their 1,400-year exile since the destruction of the Second Temple, which he sees as divine punishment for rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. A key point is his critique of Jewish pride in their Abrahamic lineage, which he dismisses as unfounded boasting. For example, he quotes Jewish claims, "We are born of the highest people on earth, of Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, etc. We are the lords of the world, and you Gentiles, are before us in the world like dung in the street." Luther counters this by asserting that true descent from Abraham is spiritual, not biological, drawing from John 8, verse 39. "If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham." He extends this to accuse Jews of lying about their messianic expectations, claiming they misinterpret prophecies like those in Daniel and Haggai to deny Christ's fulfillment. 3. Blasphemy and hatred toward Christians. Luther then escalates to accusations of blasphemy and hatred toward Christians. He alleges that Jews secretly curse Christ and his followers in their prayers and synagogues, calling Jesus a hanged malefactor and Mary a whore. An example quote illustrates his outrage. "Behold, the mouth which I see there has every Saturday cursed, execrated, and spit upon my dear Lord, Jesus Christ. Should I eat, drink with, or speak to such a devilish mug mouth?" He draws from medieval anti-Semitic tropes, claiming Jews engage in ritual murder, while poisoning, and child kidnapping, referencing historical cases like those in Trent and Weißensee. In history, therefore, they are often accused of poisoning wells, stealing children, and mutilating them, as in Trent, Weißensee, etc. Luther portrays Jews as economically exploitative through usury, avaricious, and plotting domination, likening them to the biblical Esther story where Jews allegedly sought to deal with us heathen as they dealt with the heathen in Persia at the time of Esther. He compares them to vipers and young devils condemned to hell, quoting John 8, verse 44. "Ye are of your father, the devil." 4. Protecting Christian society. Throughout, Luther uses biblical hermeneutics to argue that Jewish scriptures actually point to Christ, but Jews lie by rejecting this. He dissects passages like Genesis 49, verse 10, "The scepter shall not depart from Judah," to claim it predicts Christ's coming, and accuses Jews of fabricating interpretations to maintain their separatism. The narrative builds to a climax where Luther warns that tolerating Jews endangers Christian society, as they are a poisonous basiliscus who with his face poisons and kills people. The lessons Luther imparts are primarily warnings and directives for Christians and secular authorities to protect society from what he views as Jewish malice. One core lesson is that divine wrath against Jews proves their errors, teaching Christians to trust in God's judgment. For such terrible wrath of God is sufficient proof that they certainly must be in error and doing wrong. Even a child can grasp that. He urges Christians to learn humility by contrasting it with Jewish pride, exemplified in his advice to avoid intermingling. "I shudder so much that it penetrates my body and life." Practically, he lessons authorities on restricting Jews to prevent blasphemy and exploitation, such as by burning synagogues if necessary. First, that we avoid their synagogues and schools and warn people against them. Other lessons include forcing Jews into manual labor to curb usury. Finally, that young, strong Jews be given flail, axe, spade, spindle, and let them earn their bread in the sweat of their noses, and confiscating their religious texts. Thirdly, that you take away from them all of their prayer books and Talmuds. He teaches that expulsion may be required if reforms fail, emphasizing preachers' duty to warn, especially you who are preachers. Where there are Jews, diligently insist that your masters and regents remember the duties of their office, and compel the Jews to work, forbid them to practice usury, and stay their blaspheming and cursing. These lessons frame Jews as irredeemable enemies, urging separation to preserve Christian faith and society.